All right, David, without further ado, what's going on with the economy?
Yeah, so I have some interesting news. Some new data just came out from the EPI. So basically, big surprise, the rich are doing pretty well. New wage increases from 2017 just came out. The wages for the top 1% of earners grew 3.7%, while wages for the bottom 90% grew only 1%. Now think about how significant that is when you're thinking about 90% of the economy. I mean, people who are in the 90th percentile, like those people make significant incomes, and even they are seeing a significant stagnation in wages. Just give you a little context: the highest 1% of earners make around an average of $719,000 a year, while the top 0.1% wages average around 2.757 million. Meanwhile, the average wage for the bottom 90% of workers is only $36,182. So when we're talking about wage stratification in this country, it's massive. And, we've talked a lot about how wages have stagnated for most workers over the past 40 years, but just to put it into context, the bottom 90% earned 69.8% of all earnings in 1979. But in 2017, they earned 60.9% in 2017. So that's a significant drop off. And I just wanted to talk about this a little bit because we're seeing this huge, disparity in wage growth despite the so-called, recovery. I wanted to make the point that since 1973 to 2017, productivity has increased 77% among non-supervisory workers. So that means people who are in production. That means like real workers, not your boss, right? While hourly pay has only increased around 12.4%. So if you think about that, increases in productivity should mean higher profits, which should also mean wage growth. But we're not seeing that at all. And I just wanted to talk about a concept that might explain why there's this big mystery in rises in productivity while there's still significant stagnation in wage growth. And the main point is this: is workers produce their own value during the working day. So when you go into work for somebody else, you create value. During that working day, you create the amount of value that actually goes into your compensation. The extra, the surplus value, that's what capitalists take, right? That's how they make their money. So if you're there and you need to, create the value of, let's say, I don't know, $60, and you get paid $15 an hour. Let's make it even, and you work an 8-hour day, right? It's $120 in value. Excuse me, sorry.
Are we having a math problem
Yeah,
here?
I shouldn't be doing math live. So let's not do math live.
You even wrote some of the notes, some of the math in the notes for a little. You're having a math problem.
No,
today,
don't worry
brother.
about it. So the
You're
point
right?
is that like you cover the amount of money that you're getting paid. So that if you're getting paid a wage, you make that money in value during the day,
Okay.
and the extra money is what the capitalists are taking.
That's what they call profit.
That's exactly, and that's what they call profit. So this surplus value, that's the materialization of unpaid labor. So if we're seeing higher rates of productivity across the board, we're seeing more and more unpaid labor that's being extracted from the capitalist class. So if we're seeing higher levels of productivity while wages remain stagnant, that means that people at the top are making even more money from the labor that you're creating, which explains the massive difference in wage increases for those at the top 1% versus those in the bottom 90%, the actual workers. And it's really important to remember this, that capital is the command of unpaid labor. And there's a lot of unpaid labor going on. And this is the rate of exploitation is increasing. And there's a lot of reasons that can happen. That's weaker labor power. That's the degradation of unions. There's also like social conditions too that affect how people are paid across the board. And it's also the fear that most workers have of losing their jobs in this current climate that pushes wages down, that pushes what people will accept to work for down. And we're seeing it more and more in the U.S. economy, especially as we've moved more and more of our economic activity towards the inflation of financialization and towards the inflation of asset values over the increases in actual benefits for working Americans. And it's something that, we really need to take seriously, that we've seen a huge drop-off in the relationship between productivity increases for workers and wage increases for workers. And that's, a big part of the reason why we haven't seen any wage increases, despite all these arguments that the economy is doing well. The economy is doing well for a very, very small subset of the population, and they're really reaping in the benefits of it.
Indeed.
So what you're saying is we need to grow out of it.
I mean, isn't that the problem? Is like you can't.
So we need a lot more people with a lot more good ideas.
We're going to need to grow a lot more at
we're
this
gonna
rate.
have to grow a lot more businesses and just investing and taking that risk, and then they hire people.
Sounds like people aren't taking enough risk.
You can't grow yourself. Like you can't grow yourself out of a situation of disproportionate power. That's the fundamental reality.
Ding, 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 ding.
Not with that attitude.
Yeah, right.
Maybe you don't like capitalism.
Yeah. Maybe if you weren't so negative. Yeah. That actually basically is the answer. Maybe if you weren't so negative.
My negativity is dragging down the
or
entire US
I don't
economy.
know. I actually misread this half a study on serotonin and fucking geese formation. So hierarchies are natural, and we're gonna pretty much have to not change anything. So fucking A. Or in line with that. Fucking A. The reason you said all of that was because of jealousy, and I could prove that because of one of this panels I went to, or one of the talks that I didn't lecture. Excuse me. One of the talks that I attended at this Jordan Peterson forum at Boise State University was a guy who did just a sort of science rundown of things like the lobster and so just even the idea of drawing how serotonin works in our brains versus how serotonin works in a lobster's nervous system. It was pretty funny.
That'll keep the testosterone flowing.
Actually, literally no part of that will keep the testosterone flowing. Neither Jordan Peterson will not, and dealing with all of his pseudoscience will not. I mean, what's amazing is because I had to read a little bit of Maps of Meaning, which is his, that's the real book. And there's two things I'll share. One's funny, but I'll start with a sort of he uses terms or ideas from Tibetan Buddhism to try to this chaos and order is a natural. So he uses words that basically roughly translate to wisdom and compassion. That's the sort of those teachings. There's that interplay, and it's I don't speak Tibetan or Sanskrit, and I am somewhat well read on Buddhism and have done a lot of Western style meditation. So it's I know something about it in a very mediated way, and I know that his translation of those terms are wrong, and therefore the application of it is totally fucked. And I know that as a non-specialist.
I'm defenseless against that kind of female insanity.
Exactly. And then the other thing that's funny, and I just need to share this again, is in the beginning of his book, he's talking about how he's having these nightmares about nuclear war and Armageddon, and he's freaked, and he needs help. So he turns to Freud, and Freud is, for everything's about sex. So that I wasn't dreaming about sex.
That'll keep the testosterone flowing.
I wasn't dreaming about
I was just dreaming about big missiles.
You're getting onto it. So I wasn't dreaming about sex. I was dreaming about nukes, you pervert.
It produced an overwhelming sense of impending doom.
And it induced an overwhelming, exactly. So then he goes, and then I read Jung, and Jung's ideas were more appropriate to what I was dealing with. And then he describes what one of his dream, or he describes the dream. And it's that he's sitting on a couch with his cousin, who he describes as the most beautiful. And now, to be clear, litigious Jordan Peterson, this is satire and I'm joking. These are not verbatim quotes. And to all of his idiot fans, I'm not taking him out of context because I'm making up quotes to make fun of him. So now let me proceed. So I'm sitting next to my cousin, who's the finest piece of ass on the planet, and she really is incredibly hot. And, the injunction against having sex with your cousin, that's a hard one. Let me think about that. Because on one hand, it regulates social order, but then on the other hand, from a Nietzschean perspective, you should be able to project your will into your cousin. But but this is serious. So the dream is he's sitting next to his cousin, and she's the most beautiful girl in the world, and then an atom bomb goes off, and there's a huge explosion. So obviously the conclusion is there's that dream that definitely had nothing to do with sex.
I mean, if we wanted to help him sublimate this into something more productive, like, yeah, Jordan, look into the politics of our nuclear arms.
That's the
industry.
other thing. It's like, right? Why didn't you? Why
does it have to mean something about your cousin?
Why don't you become we are so overwhelmed by all of this shit that Donald Trump threatening to pull out of a major arms treaty, we didn't even top line it the other day.
Yeah, and I hate that shit.
And I hate that shit too. And this fucking idiot, you know what? He could be running around the country saying, straighten up your back, clean your room, should really don't fuck your cousin, and you should really write a letter to your congressperson about the SALT treaty, because the literal existential viability of planet Earth hangs in the balance.
Yeah.
That might be a little bit more useful than bitching about college kids and demonizing transgender people.
Yeah, you want to blow some political capital. Don't hem and haw over Kavanaugh. Get something done about arms deal.
Yeah, I agree with you. We should have existential dread about nukes. How about we work on disarmament and maintaining our, the infrastructure of the 80s and that allowed us to, and earlier, that allowed us, at least us, to not blow ourselves up. Just a thought.
Wow. That's kind of, I don't know, that's amazing.
It's my new favorite.
Well, that segment definitely made me a lot more pissed at Jimmy Dorgan. I never read the comments. Go to you in a second. I just want to say I don't read the comments on Majority Report videos, whatever. But I will, and I shouldn't be telling people this, I will read comments now on Michael Brooks Show videos, because we're building it out and ginning it up. And the comments on the Jimmy Dore video, most of them are positive. But we did a segment that I guess we laughed a little bit, but I don't know, grow the fuck up. It was not particularly polemical. It didn't even deal with your favorite hobby horses about the Democratic Party.
It had to do with his favorite hobby horses, which is U.S. Imperial Psyops.
Literally. And the responses were you guys are so mean and arrogant. And it's I'm sorry. You know what? I actually have a lot more respect for Jimmy Dore than apparently some of these fans do, because I actually don't run around Jimmy Dore has a major fucking YouTube platform with serious influence. And that segment might have discouraged a lot of people from looking up Lula, from looking up the nature of fascism as enabled and supported by the United States and Brazil. Because of that stupid video, which they uncritically reported. And then the other thing was amazing, which is that this was in 2017. Nobody knew. That's a year after Dilma Rousseff was removed from office. Maybe what you should just say is, please don't make fun of my internet dad, and I didn't know because I'm a fucking moron and I don't want to learn, because the fate of Brazil and America's and the world's most important political prisoner is secondary to my YouTube video watching habits and how I feel about myself.
And I will just also say it fits right into what we've been saying about apoliticized corruption. And I'll just play this full clip here.
Wow. That's kind of I don't know, that's amazing. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I want to get a Lava Jato t-shirt.
You should get a Lava Jato t-shirt.
You should wear it on the show.
You should wear it on the show, because actually there is a role that type of politics is playing in Lava Jato like things in Brazil and everywhere else in the world.
Let's just launch a lava asado.
Yeah. It's just maybe, you know what? Just put Sergio Moro into Google and then maybe read, I don't know, half of the Lula da Silva Wikipedia page and then do the report. And yes, I know Glenn Greenwald was at the same conference, but Glenn Greenwald had already been writing critically about Lava Jato.